A king never wavers. A king never bends. A king never relies on others. A king never gives up.
How?
First impressions are everything. In a world of gods and monsters, most people would walk into an arena with a bit of, let's say, existential dread. But not this guy. Qin Shi Huang didn't just walk into the Ragnarok arena. He broke into the VIP lounge of the gods, sat on their thrones, and treated the deities of the cosmos like they were his personal waiting staff. Right from his first appearance in Ragnarok Season 3, Qin Shi Huang just owned the scene, knocking down a wall, stepping right into the middle of the crowd, and dropping that iconic line like it was nothing. I mean, how does a guy who looks this plain, doesn't really scream overpowered, and comes off as pretty average, somehow end up being one of the most beloved characters in the Record of Ragnarok fanbase? Well, that's exactly what we're gonna break down in today's video. Qin Shi Huang, formerly known as Ying Zhang, is a major character in the manga/anime series Record of Ragnarok. Qin Shi Huang was the emperor and founder of the Qin dynasty, who became famous for being the first emperor to unite all of China, earning so many aliases such as Shi Huangdi, Emperor of China, King of Kings, King of Men, King of the Humans, Most Cursed Prince in History, Cursed Prince of Qin, Greatest King. But the popular one is King of All Beginnings. Right off the bat, this character straight up claimed the title of Internet Anime King. And honestly, the song choices were perfect with the titles Choose Your Fighter and Kings and Queens by Ava Max. The vibes? Absolutely locked in with Qin Shi Huang's whole energy. When you first hear it, it just hits you like boom. You get chills, your body just goes with it, and you're completely lost in the music in those clips. Yeah, that's honestly one of the biggest reasons why Qin Shi Huang blew up so hard right from his debut. Back to the line, this is the man who unified China, built the Great Wall, and allegedly searched for the elixir of immortality. But the Record of Ragnarok version of Qin Shi Huang is a complete subversion of everything the history books taught you. He's not just a tyrant, he's a philosopher king with enough swag to make a rock star look humble. He enters the battlefield over a red carpet made of the very gods who want to exterminate humanity. That is a level of audacity that shouldn't even be legal. Now, if you know your history, the real Qin Shi Huang was complicated. Let's talk about physical appearance and costumes. In the Record of Ragnarok anime, Qin Shi Huang is depicted as a handsome, fashionable young man wearing a lace robe and wearing an eye patch. However, in reality, history does not record physical details, but is generally depicted as a charismatic emperor wearing the Qin imperial attire in China, called mianfu or imperial dragon robe. This robe is often black, which symbolizes the water element and supreme authority according to the Qin dynasty belief, and is decorated with dragon embroidery or other symbols of power. Then the eye patch in the anime is a fictional addition to his special abilities, not historical facts, and several other details that are inaccurate between the anime and historical facts, such as personality, abilities, background, and specific goals. So why did the authors of Record of Ragnarok take the most feared tyrant in Chinese history and turn him into the most empathetic, lovable, and arguably the coolest hero in the series? It all starts with the blindfold. You might think it's a fashion choice, and honestly he pulls it off, but it's actually a cage. It's a barrier for a man who feels too much. Today, we're looking at a king who doesn't rule through fear, but through a physical, agonizing connection to his people. We're diving into the paradox of a man who claims to be the greatest while carrying a curse that makes him the most vulnerable person in the room. This isn't just a breakdown of a fight. This is a deep dive into the Emperor of Empathy. We're going to discuss how a boy who was treated like trash became the gold standard for leadership, why his arrogance is actually his greatest sacrifice, and why Qin Shi Huang is officially the new blueprint for what a sane hero should be. Buckle up, because the king is here, and he's already decided that the throne belongs to him. Qin Shi Huang's iconic line right from his first appearance was, "Wherever we may tread, a road shall appear ahead." Like, what other character drops something that philosophical the second they show up? Honestly, I think he's the only one. That line basically drives home the idea that a true king doesn't wait for a path to open up or follow in someone else's footsteps. Instead, by simply moving forward, the road creates itself through sheer will and real action. In real life, we're always taught to play it safe. We check if there's already a route before we take a step. We look for a map before we even start the journey. But Qin, he flips that whole logic on its head. He's saying action comes before the map. A road isn't something you find, it's something that forms because you were bold enough to walk in the first place. In short, this quote basically means wherever we step, a path will stretch out before us. It's a commitment to never give up and to have the guts to carve out your own future, even when the odds are completely stacked against you. Next, to truly understand Qin Shi Huang, we have to look past the silk and the swagger. We need to talk about the weight of the crown. In the Western world, we often view a king as the ultimate winner, the guy who survived the Game of Thrones and now gets to enjoy the view. But Qin's philosophy is a radical departure from this winner-takes-all mentality. He doesn't see the throne as a seat of power, but as a burden of service. He defines a king by one simple, brutal metric. The king is the one who never wavers, because if he falls, everyone behind him falls. He isn't the apex of the pyramid, he is the foundation that holds the entire structure together while the world tries to crush it. For Qin, the crown does not elevate him above the pain of his nation. Instead, it binds him to that pain in a way that makes separation impossible, because if the people are humiliated, then he experiences that humiliation as a personal wound. And if the people suffer injustice, then he interprets that suffering as an injury inflicted directly upon himself. In that sense, Qin does not merely govern China as an external authority figure issuing commands from a distance. He internalizes the nation so completely that he becomes its living embodiment, its shield, and its frontline defender all at once. This inversion of kingship feels strikingly modern, particularly when viewed through the lens of contemporary Western skepticism toward authority. Because in American culture especially, leadership is often associated with visibility, influence, and control, yet it is simultaneously distrusted when it appears detached from the everyday struggles of ordinary people. We live in an era where CEOs are scrutinized for profiting while employees struggle, where political leaders are criticized for rhetoric that feels disconnected from lived reality, and where the phrase "the boss" often carries connotations of distance rather than solidarity. Against that backdrop, Qin's philosophy resonates powerfully because it presents a radically different model of leadership, one in which authority is earned not through domination or inherited status, but through the willingness to absorb the heaviest consequences so that others do not have to. This brings us to the most poetic ideological clash in Record of Ragnarok: Qin versus Hades. It's a battle of two good kings, but their hearts are pointing in opposite directions. Hades is the archetype of the protector of the past. He fights for the dignity of his bloodline. He's in that arena because his brother, Poseidon, was humiliated. For Hades, being a king is about loyalty to the family. It's intimate, it's fierce, but it's closed off. Now look at Qin. Qin is the architect of the future. He doesn't fight for a brother, he fights for a promise made to a woman who wasn't even his biological mother, but who taught him what it meant to be human. Hades fights to preserve a legacy. Qin fights to create a world where a legacy is even possible. It's the love for the few versus the love for the many. But let's take the blindfold off for a second and look at our own lives. Why does this hit so hard? Because we are living in a global leadership crisis. We are surrounded by Hades-type leaders, people who are only loyal to their inner circle, their party, or their shareholders. We've forgotten what a Qin-type leader looks like. A Qin-type leader is that parent who skips a meal so their child can eat. It's that manager who takes the heat from the boss so their team doesn't get fired. Qin reminds us that true authority isn't something you're born with or something you buy. It's something you earn through shared suffering. We often think of empathy as a soft trait, something that makes you weak or indecisive. But Qin Shi Huang is here to tell you that empathy is the most hardcore strength a human can possess. To be a king in Qin's eyes is to be the ultimate empath. It's the ability to look at a stranger and say, "Your pain is my pain, and I will be the one to stop it." It's easy to lead when things are good. It's God-tier leadership to lead when you are the one bleeding the most. Qin isn't just fighting Hades for the survival of humanity, he's fighting to prove that a heart that feels for everyone is stronger than a heart that only feels for its own. What made Qin great wasn't just his strength, but his determination to stand up for his people even though his body was systematically broken. In the anime Record of Rganarok, Qin Shi Huang wasn't just metaphorically connected to his people, he was neurologically programmed to feel what others were feeling. The series presents this as a supernatural trait, but it was inspired by something very real, a rare neurological condition known as mirror touch synesthesia. Mirror touch synesthesia is a rare neurological condition that causes a person to feel physical sensations, such as touch, pressure, or even pain, on their own body when they see or experience another person being touched. This allowed Qin to experience the physical and emotional pain of those within his sight in reverse. If he saw someone hurt, the same wound would appear on his own body. What we saw during Qin's battle with Hades is proof that Qin was a king willing to take the suffering of others on himself. He decided to remove his blindfold, knowing that by opening his eyes, he would feel every slash from Hades twice, on Hades' body and on his own. But he still smiled. Why? Because for Qin, empathy is not a weakness. He wanted to tell us it's okay to care. It's okay to feel the pain of others. For Qin, the suffering of his people is also the suffering of his king, and a true king must stand at the forefront, bravely bearing the suffering of his people. This condition was exacerbated by the deep hatred he received from those around him as a child. As a result, that hatred transformed into physical pain in his body, a burning sensation. However, this condition actually triggered his ability called Qi sight. Qin could see the flow of Qi in an opponent's body and identify star points as weak points to counter their attacks. Qin wore the blindfold not because he was blind, but to limit his vision so he wouldn't constantly feel the pain of others' wounds. He understood how someone could suffer during their lifetime, and as a true king, he didn't want to continue seeing his people like that. By basing Qin's abilities on real scientific concepts, the story does something incredibly clever. It elevates Qin's character beyond mere fantasy spectacle and into something intellectually engaging. This isn't just anime magic, it's fiction that intersects with neuroscience. However, the anime doesn't portray Qin's condition as a blessing. Instead, it calls it a curse. But this is where the analysis deepens. In a world where most leaders are insulated from the consequences of their decisions, Qin is biologically incapable of isolation. He can't pretend that suffering is abstract. If someone under his rule is treated unfairly, he feels it. If someone is humiliated, the insult reverberates through his own nervous system. This is what makes him so honest as a ruler. In modern society, especially in what many commentators describe as the age of apathy, we are increasingly exposed to suffering without necessarily feeling it. Social media inundates us with tragedies, injustices, wars, and economic anxieties, yet our nervous systems adapt. The digital age has created a paradox where we are more informed than ever, but often less emotionally affected. Qin is the antithesis of that indifference, and that's why his curse is narratively so brilliant. It transforms empathy from a moral choice into a physiological inevitability. Most of us can choose whether to become emotionally involved. Qin couldn't. Her empathy wasn't just an act, it was an inevitability. In leadership psychology, there's a concept known as servant leadership, where a leader's primary role is to serve the needs of their people rather than dominate them. Qin's mirror touch synesthesia transformed that philosophy into something profound. She didn't serve because it sounded noble, she instinctively served because her nervous system demanded it. And that creates a stark contrast to many modern power structures, where distance often increases with authority. The higher one climbs, the less direct exposure they have to the day-to-day consequences of their decisions. Qin's condition shattered that ladder. The higher one's position, the more profound one's feelings. So when we call it the empathy curse, we acknowledge both sides of the coin. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it makes leadership much more difficult, but it also allows her to be honest in a way that leaders rarely are. The fantasy is that someone so powerful would be forced to feel everything we feel, and instead of crumbling under that burden, he chose to carry it. Qin's journey from the streets of Za all the way to the throne of China isn't just some regular rags to riches story, it's a deconstruction of how the human soul responds to pain. Qin Shi Huang is portrayed as having an incredibly tragic and heartbreaking childhood, which is a far cry from the arrogant emperor we see when he's older. He was known as the Cursed Prince. Born as Ying Zhang, he grew up as a hostage in the state of Za, which was literally the enemy of his own kingdom, Qin. Because of that, the people around him despised him. Even just trying to buy food at the market, he'd get bullied, humiliated, and was forced to eat thrown-away scraps just to survive. Young Qin, through all of that, grew up as a gentle, soft-spoken kid who always wore a smile. When he first met Chunyan, his caretaker and bodyguard, he was still completely looked down on. You could tell just by the way Chunyan talked to him. Harsh words, raised voice, zero respect. But what was really going on was darker than that. Chunyan actually intended to kill Qin because he was a survivor of the Battle of Chongping, and he wanted to take out his rage on a child of the Qin royal family. But that was about to change. Chunyan couldn't wrap his head around why this 7-year-old was always smiling. It felt off, almost unsettling. And Ying Zhang, who clearly couldn't fully hide whatever was going on inside, would sometimes act strange just to go along with what Chunyan told him to do.
Is that better? Forget it.
The secret behind Ying Zhang's strange behavior finally came to light when Chunyan noticed that the kid's body was covered in wounds. Ying Zhang explained that whenever the people around him felt pain or were angry at him, the wounds would just appear and then fade away after a while. He believed it was his punishment for being the son of an emperor who had massacred an entire people. Chunyan told him straight up, a 7-year-old child doesn't deserve to carry their parents' sins. Ying Zhang needed to stop absorbing all that hatred. He needed to stop smiling just to pretend he was okay. And for the first time, Ying Zhang broke down and completely let it all out, finally releasing everything he had been holding in for so long.
What did I ever do? Why did they take their anger out?
A lot of things began here. It's the first time Qin puts on the blindfold given to him by Chunyan, and the first time he ever says,
Oh, thank you. I'll wear it forever.
But that happiness didn't last long. When Qin was finally being sent back to his kingdom, they were ambushed by a group of bandits, and to protect Qin, the boy he had come to see as his own child, Chunyan gave his life. Chunyan believed that one day Qin would become an extraordinary king, one who could bring true happiness to his people. Qin ascended to the throne at the age of 12, and the rest, as they say, is history. He became emperor and unified all of China. Before he unified China, Qin climbed Mount Tai, not to pray, he climbed it to end something, a contract of humiliation centuries old between humanity and the divine. The demon god Qi Yu had been extorting kings for generations, demanding human lives as tribute, a toll paid in blood, accepted as fate. Qin Shi Huang looked at that arrangement and tightly said, no. He stood at that summit alone, facing an entity that outclassed him physically in every conceivable way, and what followed was 6 days of war. But here's what makes that battle profound. It was never just a physical fight. It was a clash of philosophies. Qi Yu represents power that dominates. Qin represents power that protects. And because Qin had lived inside suffering his entire life, had felt it in his bones, he could read every move Qi Yu made. He didn't defeat a god with hatred. He defeated him with stillness, with the quiet certainty of a man who understood that losing simply wasn't an option, because if he lost, humanity would remain a footnote in someone else's story, a species that serves forever. Qin's victory at Taishan was a new dawn for humanity. He proved that God was merely a concept that could be overthrown by strong enough human will. When he rejected the mandate of heaven and forged his own path, he was no longer merely human. He set a new standard for what our species could achieve. So when you see Qin walk the red carpet of the gods in the arena of Ragnarok, remember that he has done it before on the highest mountaintop with the lives of his entire people on the line.
We often see anime characters triumph because they have a sudden surge of energy or because of uncontrollable rage, but Qin Shi Huang was different. His victories were masterpieces of technique born from a profound understanding of balance. His Qi Yu technique wasn't designed to destroy, but to harmonize. Imagine being Qin. Every devastating attack from Hades, if it hit his body, would be felt twice as powerful by his nerves. Therefore, he had only one option: the attack must not land directly. Through the heavenly hand of defense, Qin practiced the philosophy of redirection. He allowed Hades' destructive power to flow through him, then returned it to its owner, Hades. The most genius technique and the key to Qin's victory was the bow form, tortoise ripple. Why so genius? Because it was an anti-god technique. Qin realized that even gods, when unleashing their full power, have a flow of energy or qi that must circulate. Qin used his eyes to sense the star point, the point where that energy was most unstable. He simply blowing a small air bullet disrupted Hades' energy flow at the very moment of impact. It was like touching one wrong domino and causing the entire structure to collapse. Qin didn't defeat Hades with greater strength, but with a deeper understanding of his opponent. However, Qin's ultimate victory came through the sword technique, Shi Huang Guojian. In the final seconds, with Qin already missing an arm and nearing exhaustion, he did the impossible. He absorbed the energy of Hades' own strongest attack using his armor technique and channeled it into his sword. He didn't just cut Hades, he cut down divine arrogance, using the power of the god himself as his weapon. That final clash wasn't just about sword versus sword, but about who possessed the strongest will to persevere for the sake of others. However, at the end of his life, Hades did something unexpected. He smiled and recognized Qin as the true king. Hades realized that Qin's principle, that a king is one who stands before his people, was a truth that transcended the status of god and man. Hades died not as a shamefully defeated enemy, but as a fellow king showing respect to a more worthy opponent. Hades, who initially came with cold hatred, finally saw the light in Qin. In the final moments, as Qin's sword pierced his body, Hades didn't curse the humans, instead he praised them. Hades approved of Qin's principles. He saw that Qin truly carried the burdens of his people, just as Hades had shouldered the dignity of his brother. Hades' death is one of the purest moments in the series. It is proof that a true king will always acknowledge another king, regardless of their race or caste. When Hades said, "You are truly great, king of humans," he was essentially affirming his approval that humanity had surpassed the limits set by the gods. Qin won not only because he survived, but because he managed to make the god of death himself submit to his philosophy of leadership. It was a triumph of dignity over fate. We often confuse narcissism with true authority, but Qin Shi Huang drew a very clear line. His explosive arrogance from destroying the VIP wall to commanding the god Ares to kneel was not the sign of a soul hungry for recognition. On the contrary, it was the sign of a soul that was done with itself and now lived only to be a symbol for others. Many people ask, why did he have to be so arrogant? The answer is simple: because he was the standard bearer. If Qin showed even a second of hesitation, the entire human race in the stands would crumble into despair. Qin understood that a king is the greatest actor on the world stage. He must play the role of invincible man so that his people believe they can win. His arrogance was a burden. He endured the hatred of the gods so that humans could feel pride. This is where Qin's repeated utterance of how becomes more than jargon. It becomes a self-regulation ritual.
How? 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 How?
In trauma psychology and performance science, repeated verbal cues serve as stabilizing mechanisms, little anchors that steady breathing, focus attention, and reset the nervous system during times of stress. For someone experiencing constantly amplified sensory and emotional feedback, a word like how can function like a controlled exhale in linguistic form. Qin represents modern masculinity, intense sensitivity combined with an unwavering external steadfastness. His smile in the face of divine destruction isn't ignorance, it's discipline. Qin doesn't wait for fate to unfold. He declares that fate will unfold at its own pace. He exudes personal authority, but he never frames it as isolated greatness. He is powerful because he carries others. That balance prevents his arrogance from feeling narcissistic. It feels ceremonial, like a crown worn not for decoration, but for morality. Even Hades, the embodiment of divine dignity, eventually realizes that Qin's confidence is not mockery, but conviction. Ultimately, Qin's style is genius because it is functional. He absorbs fear, he manages pain, he transforms empathy from vulnerability into real power. And in a world filled with falsehoods and feigned self-confidence, Qin's selfless arrogance feels remarkably genuine. He smiles, says how, and stands tall, not to appear superior, but to ensure everyone behind him can breathe. In our daily lives, we often experience what's called imposter syndrome, the feeling that we don't deserve our position. We fear appearing confident for fear of being perceived as arrogant. But Qin Shi Huang challenged that notion. He shows that confidence is a tool of struggle, that when you walk into a room, you don't have to wait for the world to roll out the red carpet for you. You carry it within your mind. Qin's arrogance is a celebration of human existence. He is a reminder that while we may be mere dust in the eyes of the gods, we are dust with the courage to sit on their thrones and say, hey, this is my place. Qin's cool lies not in his strength, but in his utter refusal to feel inferior. We have reached the end of this journey. Qin Shi Huang may have given us one of the bloodiest battles of Ragnarok, but he also gave us one of life's most valuable lessons. He reminded us that being strong is a choice, not a talent. He chose not to let Zhao's pain destroy his soul. He chose to see every wound as a badge of honor. For many of us watching this, we may be on our own Mount Tai, that something that binds us together. Perhaps we feel weighed down by expectations, by pain no one understands, or by walls that seem to limit our future. Qin Shi Huang stands there to tell you, break down those walls. Don't wait for others to open doors for you. Close your eyes when the world gets too noisy, but never stop moving forward. From the very beginning, when he declared, wherever we may tread, a road shall appear ahead, he established a fundamental principle of his character. Reality is subject to responsibility. He didn't seek a path, he created it. That philosophy alone transformed the framework of kingship from inheritance to creation. He accepted no structure, he created structure. Qin embodies the belief that destiny is not found, it is determined. Qin is loved not because he is perfect, he is loved because he is so human among the gods. He embodies the adage that courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that there is something more important than that fear. For Qin, that something more important was a promise to Chunyan, a promise to his people, and a promise to himself to become a supreme king. Thank you for joining me in dissecting the soul of the first emperor. If this video makes you feel a little braver to face the Hades in your life, then my mission is accomplished. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, leave a comment with your favorite Qin moments, and as the king always said, how? See you in the next analysis where we will continue to seek the path or create our own.
我が友勝者は始皇帝